Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about managing debt. I'm delighted to welcome special guest Todd Christensen. Todd is a financial educator, award-winning author, and personal finance program developer. You can reach Todd at his website, moneyfit.org, and I'll include a link in the show notes. Welcome, Todd. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Thanks, Linda. It is great to be on your show. I appreciate you having me.
I'm looking forward to this conversation because here you are, this financial guru, the person that everyone comes to, teaching how to do it. And when you started taking care of your own finances, it was not smooth sailing. You had a bit of a rocky start. So I'm looking forward to hearing your story and how you decided that helping people to get out of debt is a worthwhile venture.
Yeah. It was a rocky start is putting it mildly. It was more like over the edge of a cliff. When I went off to college, my parents were very good with money. They are very good with money. And, but I headed off to college at a time in the early to mid 80s, to date myself, when credit cards weren't really a thing for, the parents didn't know that they were a thing on campus. And you get to campus at that time, and credit card companies are giving away T-shirts and hats and footballs and things. All you have to do is sign up for a card just in case of an emergency, right? And I did. That hat or shirt or whatever it was long gone. But I got my first credit card in the mail. I think I was 21, and $2,000 credit limit. I think it was a weekday. It might have been a Wednesday. And by Thursday night, it was maxed out, all $2,000 of it. And that was just the start. I was in credit card debt for the next, pretty much that entire decade. To show you what a quick learner I was, I got my next card. It was a gas card. And I happened to, at that point, I was living across the street from a gas station. And I bought gas there for my car. I bought eggs and milk and donuts and soft drinks and everything I could buy there. And I took that $500 credit limit all the way up to $800. Ooh. And before I had to, and actually ended up settling, I think, having to settle on that. So my credit while I was in my 20s was pretty horrendous, hiding from creditors when they were calling and setting up these repayment plans. And so, yeah, it was a rocky start. And that's where I get my passion for what I do. I've always loved to teach, but I always hated finances. That's probably why I was so bad at it, because I thought I hate finances. But once I learned a little more about it, I started to realize this is something that I want to teach, and I enjoy teaching because it makes a difference.
It does. It makes a difference. And when we start so young and we really don't understand what the consequences are, and all we see is a free t-shirt, a free hat, a free football, or whatever the thing is, and someone says, you have a $2,000 credit limit, sometimes for a person who doesn't recognize what that actually means, it's like, I just won the lottery and I just won $2,000.
Yeah.
So then you think, well, yay, I can spend that. And then there are no consequences. And I just got this $2,000 gift because someone is so kind and so nice to me. And at what point did you realize that that's not really the way that it works?
So when I made my first payment, this was back before internet payments, I sent off this antique thing called a check. And it was they only asked for $50 in the mail. I thought this was great. I got this professional keyboard and studio monitors, and I thought $50 a month, this is fantastic. And I sent off the $50 check, and I would call every few days just to see if it had cleared. And when it did, I'm like, great, I can go buy some groceries with my card. I'll go buy $20, $30 worth of groceries. Got my grocery in the cart, got up to the cash register, swiped the card. And back in those days, it was like 60 seconds, processing, dialing, communicating, and it took the whole time. And then all of a sudden it came through, finally said, declined. And I was irate. I was so upset. I went home, And I called this credit card company. And you're 21 years old. And when they say, oh, well, Mr. Christensen, and they call you Mr. 21, I thought, oh, hold on. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe I better pay attention, whatever they're about to tell me. And they said, look, of that $50, all but $5 of it went to interest. So I realized, oh, okay, I could go buy $5 worth of groceries. Of that $50, all of it went to interest except just a few dollars. And that was I wish I could say that was the wake up call, but that was definitely a wake up call. And interest, I had no idea how it works. Yeah, it was free money to me, that whole credit card thing. I thought, yeah, let's go spend it. And I did.
You're using your basic math skills, which says I made a $50 payment. So now I have $50 to spend.
Absolutely.
And it seems absolutely and completely logical, except for the misunderstanding about interest. And I'm actually pleased that any part of it went to interest, because sometimes when you make the minimum payment, you're actually only paying the interest, and it hasn't even touched into the principal. But when you're 21 and you're out and you're on your own for the first time and you're trying to do your money by yourself, you just don't understand.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that you were able to go through this process and figure things out, and that now you're able to just be this clarion call to all these other people who still haven't figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who attended college just a semester or two. She never ended up actually finishing, and had a student loan. And she paid the minimum payment on that student loan for the next 10 years. And then she thought, gosh, it seems like it ought to be paid off by now.
Right.
Called the company and they said, oh, well, actually, you've been paying the minimum payment. You haven't even been paying all the interest. So where your debt was, and I can't remember the number, maybe 5,000, now that you've been paying on it for 10 years, now you only owe 8,000. And she was like, oh, wait, what? Because she did not understand that that minimum payment wasn't paying off the principal, and that it was still just, and she just was so confused by that.
Yeah.
Because, not everybody loves math. And
no,
when you get to where that your basic, if I paid $50 doesn't mean I have $50 to spend, then that can be even more confusing. So can you just kind of, just in case somebody here is still in this idea of, I don't get it. Can you kind of go over the basics, and then let's figure out how to win this game?
Sure. Yeah, you got to understand that minimum payments are set up so that if you never use the card again, a credit card, for example, it will take you 15 to 25 years to pay off. And that's as of 2009 or so, when they changed the rules that the credit card companies actually had to make the minimum payment pay down something, anything. Before that, there were some cards that you could make the minimum payment and you would end up owing more the next month. So, the basics of how it works. Interest, the higher the interest, it's a percentage game. The higher the interest, the more it's going to add to your account every month. It's to make it simple, 10% interest on a $100 loan. That's $10 a year, basically. I mean, roughly, of interest. But it's added every month, and so it's 12 months worth. So you have to take 10 divided by 12. Actually, let's take 12% interest. 12 divided by 12 months is 1%. And so you're adding 1% to your account every single month. And if your monthly payment is barely covering that 1%, then it's not really bringing down the interest at all. Typically, in the last a little more than a dozen years, about a dozen years, most monthly payments have to pay down the balance by at least 1%. So you might think, wow, so I should be paid off. If I make minimum payments, I should be paid off in 100 months, right? Again, this is the simple math that 1%, 100 of those means I'm paid off, except that it's 1% of the current balance, not the original balance.
Oh.
And since the current balance is always changing, going down, the 1% gets smaller and smaller. And so you may not pay that off for, again, 15, 20 years, 25 years. So that's the basics of how interest works on credit cards, that it's set up to a minimum payment will take you forever. And if you keep using the card, it will literally could take you forever.
Right. And that's what I was going to say is we're trying to make the math simple here. And your 20 to 25 years is if you never used it
Right.
again. See,
Ever.
that's the tricky part, is the whole point of having this card is it's so convenient and I can use it
Mhm.
all the time. So, so minimum payments, even though it sounds like it's my friend, it's making things easy for me, it's not my friend.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, it's there to make it sound like we can afford the purchase, but that's not how it works. In fact, the whole point of a credit card, if when I was young, and I still hear this, parents still are telling their kids, their 16, 18, 21-year-old kids, you're going to need to get a credit card for emergencies. Credit cards are for emergencies. Only use them for emergencies. And in my mind, parents do a disservice to their child when they start teaching them that credit cards are for emergencies, because they're not. Savings are for emergencies. There's a reason why more people have credit cards than people who have savings accounts. And Linda, when you were young, when I got my card, an emergency, my parents thought emergency would have been, broken down in a car in the middle of nowhere. And this was before cell phones. So of course that was an emergency. But a 21-year-old to a 21-year-old, an emergency is you get a knock on the door and your friends are saying, hey, we're going out to a movie tonight and going out for dinner. And it's another 3 days or 4 days till payday. That's a social emergency, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when we start talking about use your credit cards for emergency, that there is a very poorly defined idea of what an emergency is. Really, that they're there for the convenience. What you say, they can be very convenient. There's a lot of security features. It's safer to carry a credit card than it is carry a lot of cash, especially when you're traveling. But they're not there to make our life better. They're there so that we can build a credit. And if we're going to make a major purchase in the future, like a home, then yes, we can build our credit. But using credit just to build for credit's sake, I think that's is the tail wagging the dog at that point? I think it is.
So how would you recommend? Because that is something that I commonly hear is you have to be able to do this so that, because there are some purchases like maybe a vehicle or definitely a home where it's very unreasonable to have that much saved
Absolutely.
to pay for a home. And then if you don't have some sort of credit, then the banks look at you and they say, not touching this.
Right.
So,
I have no idea if you're a risk or not. And if I'm going to assume that you're a risk until you can prove otherwise. And that's what credit is. So yes, how do you build credit without the risking going into a lot of debt with credit cards? There's some really simple tips that we've developed, that I've heard of, and that I share whenever I go into classes or when I do on online courses. One, first of all, a lot of people try and start big. They start with a credit card, a major credit card, national bank, and they get declined. And they get that letter that says, you've been declined because you have insufficient credit history. And you think, well, it's a catch-22. How am I supposed to build credit if you're not going to give me a credit card? And how am I supposed to get a credit card if I don't have credit history? And so I tell people, well, one, start local or start small. Start with your local clothing store. A lot of clothing stores and regional stores, or even national credit clothing stores, or a brake and tire store shop will have credit that's very relatively easy to qualify for. And what I like about tire shops, you go in, you have the cash, you saved up for it, ideally, and you buy the tires, and $500 or $800 or whatever it is, and it's going to be like a 25 to 30% interest. It's pretty high because they are willing to take that risk. They're going to
Gotcha.
they deserve a reward, right? And the reward is higher profits on the individual account. But so you go home and you either pay all of it off so that now you have zero balance on your card. Typically, though, if you want to build your credit, you do need like 6 months worth of activity on your account. So I tell people, well, pay everything but like $50 off, and then make monthly payments on that $50 so that it's paid off in like 6 months, and you're not paying interest, 20%, 30% interest on it on $500. You're only paying it on $50. Or
Wow.
you can do, yeah, or you can do that at a store. I like it even better if you can qualify like at a clothing store where you can get a 15% off, right? Open up an account today, 15% off. Fine. Just don't leave the store until you've paid off the balance. You can go right to the customer service desk, or in some places, stand right there at the cashier and say, okay, I just made this purchase, saved myself 15%. Pat on the back. I'm smart. Even smarter. I'm going to pay this off right now before I leave the store. Here's the cash. Here's a debit card. Here's a check, whatever, however you want. You walk out the store with the purchase, with it paid off to zero. You're not going to forget it. You're not going to have to pay interest on it.
Wow. Okay. So in order to do this, Todd, you have to recognize that we're playing a bit of a game here.
It feels like it, doesn't it?
Where it does. It feels
Yeah.
like a game. Like I need to show you that I'm smart enough to pay off my stuff. And
Yeah.
and in the process of doing that, sometimes we find out that we're not as smart as we thought we were as we're trying to pay things off. So when you really understand the game, you really are proving, yes, I am smart enough to be
Yeah.
able to handle this responsibility. And so
Yeah.
I loved your example of the store, the
Yeah.
tire store, and I'm just going to repeat that. So here I'm going. I'm going to buy. I'm going to get this credit card because they're willing to give it to me, even though I don't have any credit history.
Mhm.
So for me, the win is they allow me to get this debt. For them, the win is they're going to charge me through the nose
Yep.
in interest. So I'm going to buy my tires. But haha, I have actually already saved up enough money for my tires. So I'm going to pay it all off except for $50. I'm going to hold that and then continue to make those payments for 6 months so that I can show to my credit history that yes, I was responsible and I made payments for 6 months. And then that gives me that credit history that we're looking for, and it
Yeah.
doesn't ding me with this high interest in the meantime.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. So here's a way to get started, to be able to get on the records of some credit history.
Yeah.
And then from that, would you close that account or would you keep it open and then
Well,
maybe
it
go back
typically,
to the bank and say, okay, now I have some credit history. Can I have this card?
yeah, great question. Typically, one of, not typically, one, many of the factors, there's well over 130 scoring factors in the FICO credit scoring model. Well, they've dumbed it down to five. I mean, and even then it's pretty complex. But if you look into all the different scoring factors, there's well over 130, and many of them have to do with how long you've had credit. So you don't want to close accounts unless you absolutely have to.
Mhm.
And that a lot of accounts will close if you don't use them for a year or two. So it may close automatically. But I'll tell you one other thing I love about the tire store is you've got that new account, and but you're not tempted like a credit card or even a clothing store card to say, hey, I have a tire store card. I'm going to go down and do some shopping at the tire store. It's not like carrying a credit card in your purse or wallet. There's not that same sort of consumer temptation. So keep it open if you can. Next time, the next time you need some work done on your car or your truck, go back to the same place, have it done, put it on that account, pay it all off. You can, at that point, now that you already have 6 months of activity on that, you can pay the whole thing off. You don't need to play that game, as you say. And it does feel like a game. It really is, until you can prove that you are proved not just to others, but to yourself, that you can use credit without going into a lot of debt. It is kind of a game. And I'd rather have people see it that way than see it as this idea that I just got to use it. I got to use my credit so that I can build it. That's not it. It's using it wisely.
Ooh, there's a distinction,
There
is there?
is. There absolutely is. Yeah, never. I tell people never leave the store. If you have a store card, never leave the store with money on your account, because you will forget about it before you get the statement in 30 days, and then you'll only be able to afford minimum payments. And then with credit cards, so once you get those two accounts, or even once it's one of those accounts, and you've been, maybe after 6 months, you can go to like a major credit card, or go down to your bank or credit union and get a credit card there. Don't carry it in your wallet. We're no longer in those days that I grew up in, where you're going to be stranded in the middle of nowhere with nobody to call because you didn't have cell phones back then. You have a cell phone. There are no emergencies like that. So instead of carrying the card for emergencies that will turn into non-emergencies, use anyway, just put a single purchase on it every month that is not going to vary, like a cell phone plan, or like a Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, any of those streaming services. You can binge watch your favorite show all weekend long, and it's still only $15 a month or whatever it might be. And you just pay that off automatically at the end of every month. You only need one purchase. That's another one of the myths that's out there, that you have to have all these different purchases and carry a bunch of money balances, and you do not. There's not a single one of those 130 plus factors that says anything about having to have multiple purchases or large purchases on your credit account.
Fascinating. So out of 130. So let's two questions out of what you just said.
Yeah.
One is, let's talk about quickly that you said pay it off automatically. So
Yes.
can you explain quickly how to get it paid off automatically so we
Sure.
don't get?
Yeah. Like again, it's like a game. If you don't set a system up, you're going to have a hard time remembering, and it's going to beat you. So set up a system. You basically just tell the credit card company, take the full balance out of my checking account at the end of every month. You do still want to check your balance, because just in case somebody's used your card fraudulently. Very uncommon, but it still happens every once in a while. But you can just have it set up automatically. In fact, if you don't like the idea of them taking money from your account, you set up your own bill pay through your own bank or credit union. Have that arrive at least a week ahead of time before the balance is due. If you're only making one purchase a month and you know exactly what it is every month, that way the only thing you have to be paying attention for there is price changes in the subscription service. You want to make sure that you're aware of any changes there.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So, and then you also mentioned there's these 130 dumbed down to 5
Yeah.
reasons why we have this credit score. And just your opinion, do you think that that's fair? Do you think that it's kind of what do you?
That credit itself is fair, or the
The
how
score.
they've,
Yeah. And how
yeah,
they put it together.
yeah,
What are your feelings about that?
yeah. Credit score itself, the credit scoring models, FICO is the one pretty much still has a monopoly. And then, but Vantage Score, for most of the free credit scores you can get out there are Vantage scores. Those tend to be pretty fair as far as information that they're putting through. That the only information they can base their scores on is the information that's on our credit report. Where we can have a problem in our society is what information is reported. And that's because, historically, we've had information reported that can be biased toward one community or another. We have a history of redlining that was identified and tried to be corrected in the 70s with some legislation, and there's still some of that goes on even today, on a little lesser informal basis. But creditors are the ones that get to decide what they report and when they report, or if they report. And that's where individual creditors may have policies or in their systems set in where there might be some bias and some even discrimination going on.
Oh, that's not.
Um, but that's the main challenge. But once it gets to the credit scoring models, those are blind to because your income is not a factor, age is not a factor, race, ethnicity, religion, gender. None of those are factors on our credit score. But what gets onto the credit report, that's the biggest issue.
Interesting. Okay. So as we've been discussing, and this is so broad and can cover
Mhm.
so many different things, but
Yeah.
we've kind of gone just along the path of, okay, I'm a college student, I'm 21, I'm trying to figure out how to get things started and how to do it in such a way that it doesn't uh, trap me, because
Right.
that can be a trap. So now let's go kind of on the other edge where,
Okay.
I have done it poorly.
Hmm.
And now I would really like to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's where your Money Fit comes
Hmm.
in. And it's a nonprofit.
Yes.
So what kind of services, if I'm struggling, if I have just made a mess of things, can I come to someone there and say, can you teach me how to get out? Or what services do you
Absolutely.
offer?
Yes. Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just say, been there, done that. We're all there. So it's time to stop beating yourself up about the financial troubles. In fact, going back to credit, we too often put our reputation, our personal character, we tie it to our credit, and that's not right. And I disagree with those with lenders who still say that one of the C's of credit is character. It is not. To say that somebody who has this massive medical debts, for example, and can't afford to pay those, are they of lesser character? They have are they irresponsible because they couldn't come up with money to pay all those medical debts? So don't beat yourself up. Let's just make a decision that we're going to make a change now for the better. So a consumer credit counseling agency like MoneyFit, what we do is one, start by assessing the situation. Let's talk about your income. Let's talk about what debts you do have. And quite often consumers may not even know all the debts that they have.
Mm.
And so we will pull a credit report and say, okay, here's what we're showing. Does this sound about right? Oh, I forgot about that one. Or, oh, I thought that one was a lot worse than it was. It's surprising in different directions to different consumers. And then we work with their creditors. It's not an adversarial head-to-head sort of a situation, but it's more of a partnership deal where we work the creditors and with the consumer to come up with new repayment arrangements so that the consumer is paying 100% of what they owe. If they owe $20,000, they're going to pay off $20,000, but the creditors will generally give concessions, what are called concessions, lower interest rates. So instead of dealing with 20%, average right now, if you have good credit, your average right now is 18% when you start with a new account. But these creditors will lower interest rate down to 0% or 2% or 5%, 8% typically. And so that more of that payment that you're making is going to paying down the balance rather than to the interest, and you're out of debt in 5 years or less, quite often 3 to 5 years. And there's no repayment penalty. We work with people who maybe they sell a home and use some of the equity to pay off their debts. We applaud anytime our clients pay off their debts. We're excited for it.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
So you're able to kind of be a mediator and
Mhm.
work with the credit companies to lower the interest rate. And that's amazing.
Yeah,
So
you can do that on your own, typically if you only have one account, maybe two. But when the creditors find out that you have 3 or 4 credit cards in your name, they're going to say, well, look, if we give you this concession, we're giving away a competitive advantage to our competitors unless they do the same. So how are we going to know that they're going to do the same? That's where a credit counseling agency comes in and says, we're going to put all those debts on that account. Two things, and a lot of people say, well, it's going to do these two things, and that's a negative. And we're like, no, it's not a negative. Our goal is to get you out of debt, right? One, the accounts are going to close, so you're not going to be able to use them again. We're like, yeah, is your point to get out of debt or to keep using debt? We're going to get you out of debt. Two, there's no direct effect on your credit score. There's a lot of misunderstanding out there how that works. When the accounts close, it may or may not have an initial effect on your score, but over time, as you're paying down those debts and you get to zero, we have clients who graduate with a credit score in the top 10%, 800 or better. And so it's not about, I got to protect my credit score. Yeah, the good thing is it doesn't have a direct effect, and it will improve as you pay down your debt. That's just natural. But the focus has got to be on getting out of debt and not on that. Again, I've got to protect my credit. It's not about protecting credit. And what's your purpose? Are you trying to get out of debt just to get out of debt? That's great. Do you want to get out of debt to buy a home in the future? Great. We can help you with that too. But just, I want to get out of debt, but I have to keep my credit score high, or I don't want anybody to touch anything doing my credit. That's kind of a little off focus. We got to make sure that we focus on what's the whole purpose. Getting out of debt, your credit will either stay the same or regrow pretty quickly.
There are some people, I think the way we're raised, and a lot of times, is whatever we've seen is normal.
Yes.
And so for many people, the idea that you're talking about a goal of getting out of debt seems foreign. Like, why? I mean, isn't that part of being an adult, is to continue to just make payments? So can you just briefly give me some advantages of, say I'm a person who I was raised and you just make payments. That's just what you do. So why would I want to get out of debt?
Yeah, and that is so common. Not just credit cards, but we just have come to accept a society that you buy a car and finance it. That everybody always has a car payment, and that is just not true. Here's the main reason that you don't want to be making debt payments, is because they will always come with interest. And what do you get for that interest?
Nothing.
Yeah. Can you brag about it to your friends that I'm only paying 5% interest? No, you don't brag about any kind of interest that you have to pay, right? And so it's taking money out of your account and you're getting nothing in return, other than the fact that at some point in the past, you were able to borrow that money. That is the privilege that that interest afforded you. But it's gone now. There's no benefit now to paying interest. And every dollar out of interest is a dollar you can't do something else with in your life that you want, whether it's, and I try and talk in concrete terms. I try not to say, well, if you're paying $1 in interest means you can't invest $1. Well, who cares? Because investing is foreign to so many people. But, $100 in interest, what would you do with $100 back in your pocket today? $1,000 in interest, which is pretty common in American households, just for one credit card account. What would you do if you had $1,000? Think about the trip that you could take. Even if it's a 3-day trip, that'd be a wonderful experience, right? That's round trip tickets to Europe for a person. It depends on time of year, of course. But what is it value to you? What's most important to you that you would rather be doing with that money rather than paying for something that that doesn't bring you any kind of service now?
So it puts money in my pocket, money that I'm not spending and getting nothing in return. And that is why we want to stay out of debt, because it lets us actually get something for the money that we spend. And that is, for some of us, that seems kind of obvious. And for some others, especially depending on how you were raised, this is revelatory. And so I'm so thankful that you are helping people to be able to understand.
Yeah.
Because, and I love that you talked about compassion,
Yeah.
because it is really easy to get into a situation, especially if we don't understand
Mhm.
what put us there. And so we don't need to judge ourselves. We don't need to condemn ourselves. But if we're in a not good financial situation, there is hope to be able to get out. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And it doesn't happen overnight though, right? I mean, it takes a little while.
It does. Most of our clients are in that 3 to 4 year range. Some can go as long as 5 years. Others can be as short as less than a year. It just depends on what what changes you want to make, what you're willing to make, finding extra income, using that bonus, using the tax return, um, cutting down on your costs. But yeah, it's not about the past. We got to stop dwelling on the past and say, I have a chance right now, right today. I have a chance to change my future. And I can either make this decision to have a better financial future, or I can continue to be under the hand, in the grasp of my past. Because really, when you owe money, the creditors, credit card companies, car lenders, they own a part of your life, the financial part of your life. They have certain rights to parts of your life that in normal circumstances you would never give to anybody. And so that's another benefit of being debt free, is that nobody owns any part of your financial life.
I like debt free, the
Mm-hmm.
word free. It makes
Mm-hmm.
us more free.
Absolutely.
That is fantastic. Is there anything that you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
uh, there are so many opportunities to learn. If you're not in a situation where you think, I'm doing okay on my own, I think I can get out of debt on my own, and if I really buckle down in the next 6 months, take advantage of all the free services out there, free classes. Go to a nonprofit credit counseling agency like Money Fit, and you will find free classes on budgeting, on building credit, on getting out of debt, on saving. And no need to spend $1,500 or even $200 on a class when there's so much good free stuff out there. Check with your library. I bet they've got some books. I love libraries. Librarians um, are highly underrated as far as resources anymore.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Todd. Thank you for visiting with me today.
my pleasure.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Henry Wheeler Shaw. He said, "Debt is like any other trap, easy enough to get into, but hard enough to get out of." Today, I invite you to avoid the trap of debt. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Linda's Corner, please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. I also invite you to check out my nonprofit, Hope for Healing, at the website hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free ebooks, free audiobooks, and other free resources to help increase happiness, build confidence and self-esteem, strengthen relationships, manage stress, and calm feelings of depression and anxiety. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, or Amazon bestseller, You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.